16. Bud had a list of names by dinner time. They were eating their evening meal in the courtyard, in a gazebo surrounded by goofy-looking skeletons and witches and faux stone walls. The whole courtyard would be turned into the haunted maze by Monday, Halloween Day, for kids to be chased around by not too scary holographic ghosts, mechanical zombies, and drone gargoyles buzzing overhead. At the moment, it was just a mess. Displays piled in corners, animatronic vampires leaning drunkenly against trees. Bud was projecting onto the table a paused video clip from the riot at the Night Inn. Next to it, another window, was a paused clip from the hostage standoff a month ago, a view of the mooing dudes in the crowd. A series of lines and labels identified the men who had appeared at both. Her trolls lived all over the world, but the concern right now were the ones who were local, who could plausibly show up at her door tomorrow and maybe recruit others to do the same. Lots of the guys were wearing some version of those digital skull masks she kept seeing, but they were still able to put together a handful of names. Andre said, "Just a bunch of nobodies, most unemployed, collecting federal PDR checks. The rest work part-time, spend hours a day in the hub." Zoey said, "Hey, you're talking to a former PDR girl." The federal-based income payments were derisively called "please don't riot" checks by those lucky enough to not need them. So if these are our ringleaders, the ones who'll storm the walls of the estate, what would that even look like? Echo said, "If these guys show up at the gates with rocks and bottles, they will be repelled. The ground's automated security would turn that into a sad spectacle. If they show up with firearms, that'll go even worse for them. Ask a red gun." Echo was eating some kind of kelp noodle ramen dish. Will was having a glass of scotch. Everyone else was having smoked short ribs glazed in hoisin sauce, pulled and stuffed into steamed bao buns with some shredded carrots, cucumber, and green onions on top to make it healthy. Hell, it was practically a salad. "The true threat," said Will, "is if their benefactor funds something more serious." Zoey said, Wait, are we talking about Chob showing up here with his personal army? The VOP? What would he gain by losing half of his staff and equipment, invading the home of a local real estate developer? No. If he involves himself, it would be by proxy, putting up money or something. Bud said, "There are no serious bids out to hire guns, muscle, or souped-up vigilantes. Lots of talk, a lot of it in jargon I can't unravel, but I can't find where it's being put into action at all." Zoey said, "Right, because as you keep saying, they spend all their time in the hub. That's where they're doing their planning. So, who here has gone into the hub to see what's what?" No one answered. Zoey said, "What, are you all too cool to put on a VR headset? Jesus, hire a teenager to do it. This is where the bad guys are, right? Echo, did you get a price on buying the hub?" "It's a decentralized platform that every VR networking game uses. It's like trying to buy the internet. I did find an investment opportunity in authenticating the purchases of persistent digital goods. Looks like there's a massive upside there." Will said, "Focus, people. They're planning something for the actual world. We don't care what they fantasize about inside their imaginary clubhouse. We care about how they implement it out here." "To that end," said Bud, "all I found is one guy who's rented a moving truck. Another group has put together money to buy a drone. A big one, the kind that can carry some cargo. That's about it." "What could they do with that?" asked Zoey. "The drone could drop a bomb on us, right?" Bud said, "If they were buying a bomb big enough to matter, I'd know about it." "Maybe they're going to try to use the truck to ram the gates?" Will made a dismissive gesture. "There are pillars that pop out of the ground that will not only stop it cold, but turn it into a shattered wreck. Those gates don't look like much because they're purely decorative. The real defenses are buried, all around. You've got to remember, Arthur wasn't just paranoid about rival mobsters trying to take him out. He was anticipating a SWAT team from the feds or North Korean infiltrators." "He was paranoid about the North Koreans coming to Utah? My father sounds a little bit crazier every time you talk about him." "Oh, that wasn't crazy at all," said Andre. "One tactic that came up in the war, they'd grab body cam footage during raids, run facial recognition of ground troops through social media, get their names, send squads to go kill their families back home. Both sides did it. There were dozens of murders in the states that the government thinks were retaliation against the spouses and kids of operatives. Kept it quiet, so as not to cause panic." "Jesus." "The point is," said Will, "that the only people who've ever gotten in here did it because they were let in." "But if they're coming from the sky," Echo said, "the defenses actually extend upward several thousand feet. They fire high-velocity projectiles straight up. Even if they stole a military helicopter and tried to land it on the lawn, the defenses would tear the rotors off. I mean, you wouldn't want to be standing right under it when it happened, but... Will said, Zoey, this place is a fortress. But these people would know that, right? And they're coming anyway? Exactly, said Echo. The fact that nothing is turning up is alarming. Zoey studied the paused video on the table and said, I want to talk to them. The ringleaders here. Face to face in real life. Where do we find them? The biggest concentration of them lives in the Screw. Let me guess, that's a brothel? Andre said, You think they all live in a brothel? Wouldn't it be a very profitable one? It's a sort of spiral-shaped building, said Echo. It's not residential. It was built as storage lockers. The storage operation went belly up, and, like every conceivable structure in the city with a roof and walls, it quickly filled with squatters. Andre added, You can imagine how it smells. Well, I'm going out there, said Zoey. To the Screw? Echo clearly hated the idea. Why? To let them know you're not scared? No, to let them see that I am scared. Let them and everyone on Blink see me as a person, not a monster they've constructed in their head. You want to go? Better to be there than stay behind and worry myself to death. So, how do I get out there without my vehicle getting swarmed by angry mobs on the way? Andre perked up. Ooh, you want an aircraft? Do we still have a company helicopter? Nah, I'll get you something better. Will said, I'm going to urge you not to do this, but I realize that will accomplish nothing. So, I'm going to proceed to the next part of the conversation where I compromise and say the rest of us will work out an extraction in case things go sour, set up far enough away that... No, Zoey said. You're staying away from this one. Remember, the goal is not to terrify them. It'll just be me, Echo, and Wu. I've got something else for you to work on. Choosing his words carefully, Will said, Zoey, you are underestimating your opponent. I don't care what their equipment or training is like. This is a bunch of people who have turned hatred of you into their religion, and they have nothing to lose. You are dealing with zealots, and if they get their hands on you, we have no idea what they'll do because they don't know. Regardless of the mindset of any individual in that building, the 20-something hive mind is a psychopath. I'm telling you, don't go in there without backup standing by. Here's what I want you to do while the three of us are at the Screw. All of you. Bud, Andre, you too. If we had to get to Titus Chob, like personally get to him, I want you to find out how that could be done. Andre said, The man commands a personal army, Zoey. Problem isn't getting to Chob, it's what happens to you after. That's part of what you're figuring out, how to avoid that. If it turns out there's no way to do it, then come back and say so. Then I'll hire somebody who can. Will fixed her with his gaze and said, Like I said earlier, there's always a way, assuming this plan would allow us to incorporate whatever means are available. Yep, whatever it takes. And then our goal from here on is to make sure we don't have to actually do it. I know you like using ghost holograms to torment people, maybe have him visited in the night by 3 spirits to remind him about the true meaning of Christmas, then tell him it applies to Halloween, I guess. Will, apparently taking the suggestion seriously, said, I don't think he would fall for that. Remember how he got his start. This man knows almost as much about psychological warfare as anyone at this table. Still, everyone has a blind spot that they avoid so strongly that they don't even feel the blade slipping into it. Just have to find it. All right, let's move before Will says anything else that makes him sound like a Bond villain. Unless there's dessert.
You banned dessert from the menu,
said Carlton, who it turned out was standing behind her.
Out of concern for your weight, I believe.
Yes, right. That was a test. You passed. Let's move. 17. Andre's friend, who had access to high-end Special Forces grade gear, was apparently happy to do business at 7 p.m. on a Saturday night. After a couple of calls, Zoey, Andre, and Wu watched as a surprisingly huge helicopter slowly descended toward the roof. It was quiet for a helicopter, the twin angled rotors making a low, pulsing noise that seemed weirdly ominous to Zoey, like a distant stampede felt through the ground. As it landed, she had to shield her eyes as they were buffeted by wind and debris. They use these for night raids, said Andre over the noise. Engines are electric, everything built to minimize sound. Even the heat signature is almost impossible to track. Now watch this. Andre swiped some things on his phone, and the skin of the helicopter turned transparent. It wasn't invisible. You weren't going to accidentally bonk your head on it when walking past, but if it was airborne and you were trying to spot it from the ground at night, you'd have no chance. It settled on the roof, and the rotor slowed to a stop. Zoey asked, "So, who flies it?" "Flies itself. I'll show Wu and Echo the commands. It has all sorts of emergency evacuation protocols. Can create a secure LZ all on its own. All automated." "Why are you showing them the controls and not me? You don't think I could handle it?" "Do you want me to show you?" "No." Wu said, "If this goes awry, if it turns into a riot, my job is to get you back to the aircraft and to suppress pursuit. If that occurs, it is very important that you follow my instructions." "Sure, as always." "No, not as always. You seldom do as I say. If we have to evacuate, I will be working in conjunction with the helicopter's countermeasures. There is a specific extraction protocol. Do you understand?" "Yes, I do. I also think we're going to go talk to a bunch of cowards who'll be shocked that we're even there. I doubt they'll even come out to talk to us. But this isn't for them. We're not trying to charm their pants off. We're trying to charm the pants off the audiences watching at home. All of the hangers on who could maybe be swayed." Will had walked up at some point, clearly wanting to make one last argument to call the whole thing off. "If they agree to meet," he said, not even glancing at the giant helicopter on the roof. "Don't let them take you to another location." "Thank you, Will, and when you use the bathroom, don't get your head stuck in the toilet." "It's a mistake we've made before. They may try to do it by force." "It happened once, a long time ago. I promise we won't get trapped in a vehicle of any kind. They'd have to kill us first. Also, I'm going to need several drinks before I do this. I think we're exceeding the limits of my mom's hand cream here." Andre said, "There's a wet bar in the helicopter." He wasn't joking. A few minutes later, they were on board, and Zoey found that the helicopter, like much of the gear they used, was military grade but tricked out for ultra-wealthy executives who need to be dropped into hostile countries without risk of kidnapping. Leather seats, wood grain paneling, and monitors all over to simultaneously check stock prices and track any anti-aircraft missiles that might be heading their way. They all strapped themselves in, and as the three of them lifted off from the roof, Zoey found the interior was exceptionally well insulated against even the reduced engine noise and vibration. It was the pinnacle of the kind of luxurious paranoia that Zoey never wanted to get used to. When several drones tried to follow them off the property, the aircraft automatically dispersed a shimmering cloud of something that caused each one of them to abruptly drop out of the sky. She could get used to that. The residents of the Screw couldn't really claim a neighborhood, as none of the area was supposed to be residential. The building was perched between a huge, nondescript hangar that Echo said was a Chopolin farm, a place where they were raising tens of millions of grasshoppers that would be ground up as cheap protein filler for poor people, and also packaged as an expensive, healthy superfood for rich people, depending on which vat any particular bug happened to land in. On the other side was a structure made of steel tubes and cylinders that, according to Echo, was a piss plant. It harvested human urine and extracted the phosphorus to turn into fertilizer. In between them was a building that, from the air, really did look like a gigantic screw, or a drill bit being driven into the earth. About 30 stories tall, it had been a festive orange and white at some point, but had long ago faded in the sun. There were metal railings and stairs that spiraled up the exterior. Echo explained that the whole structure was made up of detachable storage, and if you wanted to put stuff in your locker, they'd actually run it out to your house in the back of a truck. You'd throw your crap in there, then they'd take it back and run it up the spiral of rails to slot itself back into the stacks. The whole operation had gone broke years ago, and every one of those boxes had since been turned into a living space. There were bibs and bobs stuck all over the building's exterior, air conditioners, water recycling units, trash and feces incinerators, many emitting little tendrils of smoke or steam into the night air. As they started their descent, Zoey could make out people hanging out on the stairs all the way up, watching. The aircraft lowered itself gently into a spacious patch of weeds that had been the parking lot at some point. It seemed like none of these people owned cars. Echo glanced at a monitor and said, "Their blink chat is going wild. You've kicked the nerd nest." "Good." Zoey unbuckled herself and took a deep breath. The rotors went silent, and that silence allowed the nervousness to creep in. She'd forgotten all about getting that drink as soon as they were in the air. "Everybody ready?" Wu slid open the door. A little set of stairs lowered itself to the grass, and he stepped out, scanning the landscape while Zoey descended behind him. She studied the people looking down at her. Some were playing it calm, legs dangling over the railing, smoking cigarettes or puffing steam from vaporizers. She was, no doubt, face to face with her tormentors, or at least some of them. Then again, at least some of the people living here probably had no idea what the hell was going on. Zoe's heart was slowly revving up. She took a deep breath, trying to settle herself down, using the technique she'd been taught. Breathe in slowly for a few seconds. Hold it for a few seconds. Let it out slowly through pursed lips. She had no idea if it actually worked or not, but it always gave her something to do. The three of them headed across the lawn, and Zoe turned and scanned the sky for her drones. With the helicopter having shut down, she was certain she'd be able to hear them before she saw them. No sign yet. Zoe got within shouting distance of the building and said, "Hey, it's Zoe. I want to talk." No response. Some of the guys on the railing looked at each other, muttered things she couldn't hear. She then heard the faint buzz from behind her and turned to find tiny running lights flying in formation. 6 red, white, and green drones landed gently around her, each designed to look like an Italian man in a chef's outfit, flapping his arms like wings. Below each was a cargo hold the size of a small oven. "I brought pizza." Zoe had been curious to see who, if anyone, would emerge to meet her. More people were popping out of various doors, but it was presumably to just get her on camera. Word spread fast on Blink. The watch counts would be skyrocketing. Echo helped her stack the pizzas on some circular metal tables nearby that looked like they'd been stolen from an outdoor restaurant somewhere. Zoe opened one of the boxes, pulled off a slice, and took a bite. "See? Not poison." She waited. She looked back at Echo. "Anything?" Echo had her phone out, monitoring the Blink feeds. "Inside, it's chaos. I think they're trying to throw a plan together." Finally, a guy walked out from a unit 3 floors up. The setup of the stairs meant he'd have needed to walk all the way around the building to get down, but instead, he climbed over the railing, dropped where the path ran back around below him, then dropped down again to the pavement. It was the least handicapped accessible building Zoe had ever seen. The guy was a scruffy, thin 20-something with a knit cap pulled down over his ears. Maybe he was one of the guys they'd pegged from the videos, maybe not. They all kind of looked the same to Zoe. As he approached, Zoe said, "Hey, what's your name?"
He wants to talk to you.
"Who?"
The blowback.
"So that's one specific guy? And who are you?"
I'm also the blowback.
"Okay. Do you want some pizza?"
Come with me.
"He can't come out here? It's a nice night." The guy was already walking back toward the building.
This way.
Zoe now had a choice to make. The helicopter was probably 100 feet from the building, but that actually meant they would still be well within range of the aircraft's many dirty tricks should things go wrong. But if they went inside the building, they would be cut off, at least to a degree. It would just be her, Wu, Echo, and whatever they brought with them. For the 30th time, Zoe touched her necklace to make sure it hadn't fallen off at some point. She had seen Echo packing at least one exotic bladed weapon. Wu, of course, had various devices hidden all over his body that could do everything from temporary blinding assailants to vaporizing entire limbs. Zoe asked him, "What do you think?" "You know my thoughts already, but this is why you're here, is it not? Only you can decide." So, up the clangy metal stairs they went, rounding the exterior of the building, past one storage unit after another. Some had music wafting out from behind the closed doors. Some were blasting old TV shows or Blink feeds. Some doors were propped open and the tenants stood in the doorways to get a look. Zoe said hello when she passed. Most couldn't maintain eye contact. From way below them, a couple people mooed and giggled. They finally arrived at a cramped living space that was much deeper than it was wide. A pair of narrow beds were suspended from the ceiling, and below them was a kitchenette on one side, a pair of gaming chairs on the other. At the end was a makeshift door that hopefully led to a bathroom. Zoe had lived in 7 places in her life. She judged that this was better than maybe 3 of them. There was a chubby kid with a round face sitting on the floor, typing on a laptop. He looked startled to see Zoe come in. He said, "Oh, hi." To the scruffy kid who still hadn't given her a name, Zoe asked, "Is this him? The ringleader?" The kid on the floor looked terrified. "Oh, no, I'm just here to get you logged in." He pointed to the gaming chairs. Each had a pair of goggles dangling off of one armrest. They wanted her to go meet them in their VR hangout in the hub. A situation Zoe was totally unfamiliar with because the suits had refused to take it seriously enough to scope it out in advance. She should have pressed the issue. Damn it. The scruffy guy in the knit cap nodded toward Echo. "Her too." Zoey gave her the choice. You want to plug into this thing with me? Or stay here and keep watch with Wu? You wanted me to come to the meeting. The meeting is in there, apparently. Zoey eyed the goggles warily. Wait, this doesn't count as following them to another location, does it? If somebody wanted to booby-trap a hub interface thing, what's the worst they could do? From the software end? Show you flashing lights to try to trigger a seizure, but only until you closed your eyes. Blast a loud noise through the earbuds, make your ears ring for a while. I suppose the device itself could be booby-trapped. Set your eyeballs on fire or something. The scruffy kid said, No trap, but you can exchange the goggles for any you can get your hands on if you're scared. I don't give a shit. Wu actually took him up on that offer. A few minutes later, the headsets were exchanged for 2 that had been gathered from 2 different sets of randomly chosen neighbors. Zoey and Echo sat, and both the scruffy kid and the kid on the floor with the laptop vacated, at Wu's instructions. They were to be left alone in the room. Wu would watch the door. He checked the makeshift bathroom to confirm nobody was waiting to ambush them. The whole storage unit smelled vaguely of the human waste incinerator back there, like turd toast. Zoey sat and put on the glasses, the attached speaker buds automatically lowering themselves into her ears so that her sight and sound went away in unison. In that moment, yes, it absolutely did feel like she had in fact just followed a stranger to another unfamiliar place. Breathe in slowly. Hold it. Breathe out. A series of login screens appeared and went away without any action from Zoey. Once those screens dissolved, she found herself in a vast marble room that was set up kind of like a courtroom, or some kind of royal judgment council. The walls on either side were white, with waterfalls every 10 feet running deep crimson, as if the room was gushing blood. In front of her was a massive golden throne that appeared to be built out of hundreds of severed heads, as if each had been gilded after the beheading, all bound together by barbed wire. Zoey moved forward to get a closer look, and a line of text popped into her view. Golden severed head throne, unlockable at 25,000 S. She heard muttering and became aware of a couple dozen figures standing around her. Some looked like people, but most were humanoid animals. All were wearing some kind of armor, none wearing the same outfit. Some had flames roiling from their shoulders or tendrils of some kind of green energy. Their faces were all bare skulls of various types. A moment later, a shimmering figure materialized next to her, a golden goddess of pure light. She wore a wispy shroud of undulating mist, but was otherwise naked. She had Echo's face, but the boobs of a much bustier woman. Zoey said, Why do you look like that? Echo looked down at herself and grunted in annoyance. Ask whoever created the accounts for us. Or better yet, don't. A man suddenly materialized on the golden head throne. Zoey knew the face, the chiseled features, the pompadour of plastic jet black hair. Instead of fanciful armor, he wore a gleaming white tuxedo. Can we not meet in real life? Asked Zoey. I showed up here myself, despite the threats and everything that's happened. I'm not here to hurt you, I just want to talk. We can talk here, said the man who apparently called himself the Blowback. Or one of the men? The head man? He spoke with a deep booming voice. Artificial. But we're not having a conversation, she said. We're operating puppets. You don't really look like that, and I probably don't. Zoey gestured with her right hand, and a hoof came into view. Wait, am I a cow? She looked down and around at herself, and saw 7 more hooves on the ground. She was inhabiting the body of a giant spider-cow hybrid, slick black skin, like the terrifying drone they'd used the night of the hostage crisis. The only clothing it was wearing was a huge black pair of panties with white skull polka dots. She sighed and said, Is there a point in me asking your name? Your real-life name? The one you were born with? You may call me the Blowback. Of course. And while you and your savages may rule the Badlands, there is justice here. Equality. It looks like a nice place. I see why you like it. You can't have a severed head thrown in real life without people asking all sorts of questions. But I don't know what the Badlands are, and I certainly didn't know I ruled them. When you take off your headset, that's where you'll be. Echo said, The Badlands are what they call the physical world. The world outside the hub. Okay. Well, I still don't really rule it, but we're not here to argue. What I'm here to say is that I think we're all being played. Oh, well, that's good to hear, said the Blowback, though in a completely different tone and cadence. I take it you mean you have Dexter Tilly with you? That he is in fact alive? No, he's... Or that his organs aren't missing? yet a different voice, coming from the blowback's mouth. Can you show us his organs? You got him with you? He's really dead, but I didn't... Here, let me ask you this. Where do you think the bounty funds came from? You hate that I've got all this money, but somebody on your side has millions they can throw around. Or, and here's what I think, somebody rich is jerking you guys around. And all of us, really. In the original deep, booming voice, the blowback said, "That money was collected by true believers who stand for justice." Then another voice, nearly overlapping, said, "A loyal member donated his winnings from an injury settlement." Then a third, slightly accented voice said, "It's none of your business where the money came from, bitch." All from the same digital mouth. Zoey finally pieced together that she couldn't meet with the real-life version of this person because there was no single individual. A bunch of them were just taking turns. Were they all even in this building? Echo said, "Is there any way we can talk to just one of you? Can you designate a representative here in the city?" "When you speak the truth, you speak with one voice." They clearly weren't able to talk simultaneously, so it apparently came down to whoever keyed in first. Zoey imagined a bunch of guys with their fingers hovering over their respective talk buttons. The direction of this negotiation would be determined largely by whoever had the quickest reaction time. She wondered how Will would deal with a situation like that, and decided that he had already given his answer. He'd bring an army, or stay home. "You guys have access to my whole life history. You know that a year ago I was poorer than any of you. So my question is, do you think I was a cannibal back then?" In various tones of voice, the blowback said, "You were indoctrinated into the cult where Arthur Livingston died. You're the one who killed Arthur and dined on his liver. I don't know what you did back then, bitch." Zoey sighed. "Did you hear that I brought pizza?" The original booming voice said, "It is scientific fact that substantial wealth makes it physically impossible to feel empathy on a human level. Empathy comes from needing other people. Take that away, and the brain mutates until it is indistinguishable from that of a serial killer. It becomes unable to perceive the consequences of its actions. The blowback is here to show you those consequences." So, Echo 2, she won't eat any animal capable of feeling sadness, but she thinks she dines on human livers? The blowback looked down at Echo and asked in the booming voice, "Do they make you eat the flesh? Are you allowed to answer?" Zoey threw her hooves into the air. "Wait, you think she's our hostage?" Echo said, "I'm really not. I work for her willingly. Whatever you accuse her of, throw me right in. We're both innocent or we're both guilty." The blowback came down from the throne, using several golden faces as steps on the way to the floor. He put a hand on Echo's shoulder. "We know Arthur kidnapped you at a young age," he said. "If you're still in there, the real you, tell us. Send us a signal, and we'll come get you. We can protect you." Echo said, "That will absolutely not be necessary." Zoey said, "What about Wu? Is he a cannibal? I'm sorry, but I'm fascinated by the lore." "Wu does the killing and the cutting. These rituals originated with Chinese mafia. He's from the suburbs of Oakland." Echo asked, "Do you know Titus Chubb?" A member of the armored crowd behind them shouted, "Dirk! Dirk!" Then this started a chant of that name. Zoey said, "So you do, or apparently you know his bodyguard." The blowback, in a new voice Zoey hadn't heard before, said, "Dirk Vicernus is a supreme god among men. Someone send up the DV signal. See if he's on." A short time later, a new figure popped into existence next to the blowback. Dirk Vicernus looked exactly the same in the game as he did in real life, down to the finest detail. He'd even scanned in his patented yellow and black armor. Or had he started with the hub version of himself and carefully recreated it in the flesh? Zoey shot a meaningful look at the Echo avatar, then recalled Echo probably couldn't read the expression of the cow monster standing next to her. What she was trying to communicate was that their situation suddenly seemed much clearer, if not better. Out in the real world, someone like Chab and his henchmen would have no reason to come within 1,000 yards of a place like this, or talk to societal dropouts like these. In the hub, though, all of the rungs in the ladder were rearranged. Andre's vectors of power were all redrawn, and it had all been invisible to them, because all of it occurred here, in this other world. Vicernus, whose smirk came through on his avatar perfectly, said, "What is so urgent?" "The cow came here to scare us into abandoning the quest for justice," said the blowback. after she and her friends tied a man down still alive and had a chef make sushi out of his organs as he screamed, making him watch his own mutilation. Zoey threw up her hooves again. You just keep adding things. Eating him while he pled for mercy. Then came the orgy, afterward, around his corpse. Oh my God. Dirk Vikernes seemed mildly amused by this. Is this true? That was very foolish. I just came here to talk, but I'm getting an education. Zoey looked at the blowback and said, Let me guess. Our Swedish friend here is the one who keeps turning up with brand new scandalous information about me, and his boss has mountains of money and profits from this conspiracy theory, but none of you are smart enough to put two and two together? Vikernes just smirked harder. I come to socialize when I'm off work. Do you ever let Wu go home to his family? We have a schedule worked out, but see, it's harder when I'm being bombarded by nonsensical death threats 24 hours a day. If you do not want a negative reputation among this community, perhaps you should stop eating its members, Tomorrow, said the blowback, we will come for you, and we shall have a feast of our own. This is not going to go well for you, said Zoey. I don't mean that as a threat. Even now, I don't want that outcome. Vikernes stepped forward and said, That sounded like a threat to me. Did it sound like a threat to you, boys? Zoey shook her head. A cowbell softly jangled. You're such a tough guy. All your muscles. Your boss, too. His personal army. Why do you have to fight this cowardly proxy war? You're using these idiots as your foot soldiers. If you and Chab have a problem with me, why not face me directly? He moved even closer to Zoey, and she felt the urge to back up, even though she wasn't actually in any kind of danger. We have more than 20 witnesses who can attest that you threatened the residents of this building. Echo's shimmering goddess avatar stepped forward, as if to get between Dirk and Zoey. We know you knew Dexter Tilly. You were caught on camera together. Did you kill him just for this? To stir up a bunch of broke kids? How many people could have been hurt or killed in the fire at the inn today? Added Zoey. Do you even care? Vikernes was looming over her now. Out there, you can threaten people, kill them, get them to do whatever you want. In here, we rule. Great, I'm happy for you. This is your last warning. If you show up at my gates. The world was ripped away from her. Echo, the real one, was standing there, the goggles in her hand, looking frantic. They're locking us in. The door to the storage unit had been closed, and Wu was not in the room with them. There were muffled yells and cleaning noises from outside. Zoey screamed, Wu! She reached for the latch on the door, then yanked her hand back. The handle had burned her. A shower of sparks poured through, the metal around the latch glowing orange. The room filled with acrid smoke. They were welding it shut. Zoey kicked at the door, then almost fell down when the entire room jolted, and then rumbled. Momentum threw her backward. They were moving. 18. It felt like they were going down. The building's storage container mechanism had apparently been kicked to life, lowering them along the rails to ground level. Zoey spun to face Echo. Don't panic. I'm not panicking. You should be. What if we run out of air? That would take several days, even if the container were airtight, which it's not. For now, sit down and hold on to something. Why? Because for all we know, they're going to tip this thing right off the side of the building. Zoey sat on the floor and grabbed hold of a bed frame. The room rumbled and descended, then jolted to a stop. Shouts from outside. Zoey braced herself for whatever might come cutting its way through the sealed door. She'd worn her action shoes. Instead, there were more clunking and clinking sounds from outside, and then they were moving again. Echo said, All right, that's what I was afraid of. They loaded us onto a truck. Where did they get a truck? They're going to take us to another location. Yes, oh my God. Will is going to have I told you so etched onto my tombstone. Stay calm. There's nowhere we can go that can't be tracked. We'll arrive, we'll figure out their intentions, and decide what to do next. This is my fault. If they kill you, it'll be because of me. And Wu, he could already be dead. Oh my God. No, if they kill us, it'll be their fault. What if they dump us in the lake, and this slowly fills with water, and we drown trying to claw our way out? And then we will die knowing that we kept our cool right up until the end. Right? The vehicle was turning, then driving again. They were now on a road to somewhere. After a few minutes, Zoey started muttering, I'm so stupid. I'm sorry I'm so stupid. Zoey, I wouldn't be working here if I thought you were stupid. Why are you working here? Like, at all? Honestly, You're asking now? No. I don't know. Clearly thinking the conversation would distract Zoe from her meltdown, Echo sighed and, speaking as rapidly as possible, said, I got caught cheating at one of your father's casinos. Blackjack. Me and my partner at the time. My partner told them I was the mastermind. They let her go. Arthur came in the room and offered me a job. See, because he thought I was the mastermind, which I wasn't. My parents still live in Honolulu and think I'm a high-end concierge. Must have been awkward with the partner later. The relationship grew cold after that, yes. That, by the way, is the face I imagine on my punching bag. The truck was humming along, but didn't sound like they were doing highway speeds. Still somewhere within the industrial park. So far, at least. Zoe sighed. Everyone has a cooler backstory than me. I can't believe she sold you out. I wouldn't do that. I know you wouldn't. Great. Nice talk. We should hang out sometime. Why don't we hang out? I invited you to go on a hike with me. Remember? You said you'd rather snort bees through a straw. I guess I meant something more stationary. Wait, did you say you were from Honolulu? I thought you were from the Philippines. Are the Philippines part of Hawaii? Parents came from there. And no. I don't think I could find the Philippines on a map. Yes, you could. The maps have all the countries labeled. That's literally what a map is for. I just mean, is it weird that I never asked? Echo motioned for silence. The room was rolling to a stop. There were voices from outside the sealed door. Echo said, Close your eyes. Zoe didn't understand the command until a piercing blue light flashed through the door frame, sizzling through the metal of the weld. The door was kicked open, and men were yelling for her to lie flat. Zoe was thrown to the floor by rough, gloved hands, and her wrists were bound behind her back. She was dragged out of the room, and as she passed through the doorway, she could hear men inside talking to Echo, saying, It's okay, we've got you, you're free. Zoe was dragged down a ramp to the ground. There were people everywhere outside, all of them wearing the yellow and black armor the vanguard of peace goons wore when they were expecting battle. They were all inside a vast, dark space that, for a confusing moment, Zoe thought was an ice cave. There were transparent lumps and misshapen pillars all around her. Then she was dragged past a glass stalactite with strips of green frozen inside it, leaves of a cannabis plant, encased as if trapped in amber. Zoe suddenly knew where she was. The huge building had been a hydroponic weed-growing greenhouse, but the overhead lighting system had caught fire a few months ago, melting the clear plastic walls and ceiling for several floors above it, trapping much of the crop below when the material cooled back to a solid. It turned the whole interior into a sprawling, weed-themed abstract art installation. Zoe had watched the fire and rescue operation live on Blink back when it had happened. Tabula Rasa was also a prolific producer of large-structure fire streaming content. A set of headlights clicked on nearby, then another, revealing that multiple black VOP vehicles were parked around her inside the building, including an armored vehicle the size and shape of an RV. That's where they were taking her. Outside the door of the RV was a stern-looking middle-aged woman, waiting with a tool that looked like a handheld vacuum cleaner. Zoe's escort stopped and let the woman run the machine up and down her body. It emitted a warning squeal, and the woman nodded toward the RV. The door was opened, and Zoe was tossed inside. She tumbled to the floor, unable to catch herself with her hands tied back. She was followed in by the stern woman. A monitor on the wall displayed the interior of the vehicle. The room had its own camera feed. Then, just behind the woman, came a familiar hulking figure with mussed hair and a ridiculous snake beard. Dirk Vikernes, suddenly here in the flesh, as if he'd crawled out of the VR headset and into the real world. Of course, he'd been actually lying in wait for this. All of them had. Where's Wu? Is he okay? You are harassing clients as a vanguard of peace, said Vikernes. They have the legal right to protect themselves and their property from aggressors, and we have been employed to exercise the right on their behalf. You're making a huge mistake. My people can get to you. The Chob, too. Any of you. You don't want a war here. Let the record reflect that our scans detected you have one or more lethal devices hidden on or in your body. From the floor, Zoe said, I do not, and you know it. As such, we are authorized to perform a thorough search of your person. I have brought a female staff member to conduct the search itself. I will be present to guarantee her safety. Zoe tried to scoot her way backward, away from them, not that there was anywhere to go. She looked up to see herself doing it on the monitor. You're streaming this. The exam must be recorded on video to protect ourselves from liability, said Vikernes. We of course do everything possible to guarantee the privacy of all suspects, but cannot be held liable if security protocols are breached and the stream becomes public. He smirked his way through the resuscitation of the disclaimer. The stern woman made a move toward Zoey. She kicked at her, warding her off with her feet. Don't. Dirk Vikernes pulled out one of those electrified clubs, and a little fist of blue lightning popped from the end. If you continue to resist, I will be forced to stun you. To the woman, Zoey said, How can you not see what's going on here? Even if Chob and Dirk here are in on the setup, why can't you see it? There are other jobs you can get. The woman, sounding bored, said, Miss, I'm going to untie your hands long enough for you to disrobe. She is too volatile to have the restraints removed, interjected Dirk. I am authorizing you to cut off her clothes. The woman, still bored, pulled a pair of scissors from a pocket. Miss, I'm going to cut your clothing off of you. If you thrash around, you're going to get cut. We'll have a hospital gown for you to put on. Vikernes smiled and said, If she behaves. Good girls get gowns. Are you a good girl? Zoey shoved her way backward along the floor with her feet until she was pressed against a wall. The woman closed in. Zoey put her feet up again. Through gritted teeth, Zoey growled, Don't. The woman grabbed Zoey's left foot and yanked off the shoe and the sock, tossing them aside. She grabbed the other shoe, and Zoey reached up with the other bare foot and pressed her toe into the heel. There was a soft shik, and a pale orange blur whooshed out from the toe of the shoe. A blade, the shape of a chevron, was now embedded in the ceiling, glowing orange, tendrils of smoke wafting off it. The woman yanked her hands away and stood confused for a moment. Then she looked at her hand, then down at the floor, then at her hand again. 3 of her fingers were now lying at her feet. There was a faint smell of cooked flesh, the projectile having seared its way right through tendon and bone. The woman started screaming and backed away, directly into the huge, muscular, thoroughly confused man behind her. Zoey quickly folded up her legs and pulled her bound hands over her feet, getting them in front of her. The binding was a thick black strap that looked like plastic but felt like steel. On the floor in front of her was the pair of scissors the woman had been about to cut off Zoey's pants with, lying there among the fingers. They looked like they'd be useless against her restraints. Dirk Vikernes rolled the screaming woman aside and lunged at Zoey. She aimed her foot at him and he stopped cold, unsure if her action shoe had another shot in it. It didn't. He then abruptly ducked and snatched at her foot. Zoey tried to pull away, but he clamped a hand around her ankle and ripped the shoe off with the other. She kicked at him with her bare feet, having little effect. Vikernes grabbed the Thor club, the end crackling and sizzling the air as he brought it toward her. There was a blast from right outside the RV's door, and Vikernes whipped his head around to face it. Where the latch had been, there was now a smoking hole. Vikernes pushed away from Zoey to face the door just in time to see Echo Lean appear, her cheeks and shirt splattered with blood. The stern-looking woman was still screaming on the floor nearby, clutching her mutilated hand. Dirk Vikernes decided that of the 3 woman problems he was juggling, Echo was the most pressing. He stepped toward her, then swung the lightning club in a downward arc as if to simultaneously cave in Echo's skull and electrocute her brain. She stepped aside, let the club's own momentum carry it downward, then reached out and directed the club right into the man's own foot. He growled and fell to his knees. Zoey scrambled to her feet, snatched up the scissors in her bound hands, and said, Hey! Dirk Vikernes turned, and, as he did so, received a pair of scissors in his right eye socket. He screamed and collapsed against the wall. He felt around his face, frantically trying to figure out what had just happened to him. Echo was yelling for Zoey to come with her, to get to the helicopter. Zoey started in that direction, then on the way she stopped, gathered herself, and kicked Dirk Vikernes right in the stabbed eyeball with her bare foot, slamming the butt of the scissors, shoving the blades deep into the man's skull. He slumped over. His hands went limp. Echo was pulling at Zoey's sleeve. Zoey yanked away from her, then turned to look for the stern woman, to see if there was another sharp object for her. The woman, however, was on her hands and knees trying to gather up her stray fingers. Echo was urging Zoey along, and this time she obeyed. Outside the RV was utter chaos. Someone said, Are you all right? It was Wu, holding his katana above 3 writhing men in VOP armor who were clutching various parts of their bleeding bodies. 2 of them were missing their right hands, the hands themselves still wrapped around the grips of the guns that were lying on the molten glass floor nearby. Wind howled through the open space, and Zoey found the big open doors of the greenhouse. Outside was a typhoon that was whipping around dust and debris generated by Zoey's helicopter, which was now perched out there. A rain of blinding lights had kicked down from all sides of the aircraft, and a booming electronic voice was telling everyone to stay back. Behind the helicopter, in the distance, were more headlights. Backup was coming down one of the industrial park roads, and presumably not from Zoe's side. Wu whipped out a blade that quickly melted its way through Zoe's restraints. The three of them ran for the exit, Zoey acutely aware that her bare feet were becoming sticky with other people's blood. A VOP guard intercepted them on the way to the door, rifle raised. There was a buzz from above them. Then, a projectile zipped down through the air and hit the guy right in a patch of exposed neck between his helmet and shoulder pads. The projectile popped and crackled, and the man screamed, clutching his neck, smoke wafting out of the wound. The shot had come from a drone hovering overhead. It followed as they ran to the door, escorting them to the aircraft. Wu was bringing up the rear, covering their retreat. Zoey tumbled into the helicopter after Echo. As Wu was closing the door, Zoey took one look back into the greenhouse, at the RV. A VOP guard was looking into the vehicle, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. He had pulled off his helmet, and just before the helicopter's door slammed shut, the guard turned and looked right at Zoey, an expression on his face that said, "My God, what did you do?" 19. Will was waiting for them on the roof of the estate, the air from the rotors whipping around his overcoat. His hand was wrapped in a bloody bandage, like he'd seen some action of his own. Zoey had decided on the ride over that if Will gave her any version of "I told you so," that she would just start clawing at his face like a rabid raccoon. Three of them stumbled out of the helicopter, everyone splattered with crimson. Will looked over at Zoey and said, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, they didn't have time to do anything." "That's not true." "I stabbed Chob's henchman's brain with scissors. Someone needs to find my mother. If Chob is on the warpath after this, then she's been secured and is en route. Bud and Andre are on it." "Oh, okay. Good." From behind her, Echo said, "I'm fine, by the way." Will's mouth made it about 5% of the way to a smile. "I watched your escape on Blink. I knew you were fine. I've never seen 8 men get stabbed before." Echo said, "Wu fell off a 10-story railing. Nobody's going to ask how he is?" Zoey turned to face him. "You did?" Echo said, "He was hit with a stun round from above. There was a team waiting on the top floor. It was an ambush." Wu waved it off. "I didn't fall all of the way down. I was able to catch myself and swing back onto the railing one level below. Then many armed men appeared." "Holy crap! How did you get away?" "I allowed them to abduct me, then secretly commanded the helicopter to follow. Then I incapacitated the guards and commandeered their vehicle." Zoey said, "With one arm? The cast allows me to move my fingers a little." They walked along the flat rooftop until they reached a circular iris door that opened to reveal the stairs down to the 3rd floor. Arthur's old bedroom was nearby, the setup apparently arranged so that he could get to a waiting aircraft if the estate were ever overrun by Koreans, and all of his many downward escape routes were blocked. His bed literally had been built with a chute that would take him to the garage at the press of a button. Zoey wasn't in the mood to point out that the style of door made it seem like they were walking into the house's butthole. That was okay, as she'd pointed it out every single other time they'd been up there. Zoey got halfway down the stairs and found her legs would not support her any longer. She kind of awkwardly sat/fell on the steps. "Hey, let's stop here for a moment. On the stairs. I like to just sit on the stairs sometimes." Echo said, "It's okay to fall apart a little, now that it's safe." She looked over at Will. "When they sealed up the room, trapped us in there, I panicked, my claustrophobia kicking in. Zoey had to calm me down." Zoey muttered, "That's not how I remember it. Why is everybody else calm but me?" Will said, "Wu was a trained soldier. Echo is, let's say, built for this kind of thing." "Right, and you're drunk. Say what you want to say. Say, 'I told you so.' What would be the point? Either you'll learn to trust my advice or you won't." "Did my father do that? Just go along with whatever you said?" "Arthur once chased me around this house with a gun because he didn't like the advice I gave him. I had to put him in a headlock to calm him down." "Do I even want to hear the rest of that story?" "Not much to it. Arthur developed a crush on a local mob boss's daughter. Mob boss said he'd have us all killed if Arthur touched her. Arthur persisted. The girl started to act interested. The guy could really turn on the charm. I warned him. He ignored me. So, I had Echo go out in disguise and bump into the girl at a bar, do some snooping. She found out the girl was still in love with her college boyfriend who lived in New York. We arranged for the guy to hear about a job opportunity here in the city that he couldn't refuse, then arranged for the girl to run into him once he arrived. They fell into each other's arms. They're married now. Did everything we could to make it all seem like coincidence to Arthur, but he saw right through it. Got drunk and tried to shoot me. A year later, he cried his eyes out while apologizing. Said I was right all along. How did I know your story was going to end that way? It must be hard being the smartest person in the universe and seeing the rest of us mortals bumbling around like idiots. You've worked in restaurants, right? As a server? It's like that customer who comes in and says, I want the grilled cheese, but I'm allergic to cheese, so leave it off. And you want to say, now, you realize that's just buttered toast. But the customer is always right, and so you do the order exactly like they said. Then, when you bring it out, they say, what's this? I ordered the grilled cheese without cheese. You brought me toast. There's a point where you realize doing your job isn't enough, that you should have gone further, refused to take the order, and tricked them into thinking it was their own idea. Saved them from themselves. Wait, am I the customer ordering the cheeseless grilled cheese in that scenario, or was it Arthur? You're the customer who comes in the day after that, saying, I'll have the BLT, hold the bacon, lettuce, and tomato. I'm not claiming to be a genius, Zoey. I'm just saying I recall what happened last time. And last time, Arthur's enemies caught him alone, tore his guts out, and he died so hard that they barely found enough bones to fit into a jar. Got it. And just so we're clear, this is war now, right? I killed Chob's right-hand man. There's no going back. Whatever's coming tomorrow night, there's no negotiating our way out of it now. Are we sure they're waiting for tomorrow? Asked Echo. There's not a convoy headed this way right now. Will said, No, there isn't. Zoey shook her head. Of course not. They said they're coming tomorrow. That's when they'll come. It's a huge Blink event, appointment viewing. They want the audience to be tuned in and waiting. That's their Devil's Night party. Somebody help me up. Wu did. Her bones were jelly, but she thought she could make it down. They continued down to the second-floor hallway, and Zoey said, I'm taking a bath. Echo, I suggest you do the same. You have the blood of 8 men on you. Wu, get some rest. Or go to the hospital and get the 5 or 6 surgeries you probably need by now. Will and Echo started walking away, toward the elevator to the parking garage. Wait, said Zoey. You're staying here, right? On the grounds? Where it's safe? Echo, I've got lots of showers. Or you can use mine. No, thank you. I have to go feed my dogs. These people aren't running me out of my home. Okay. Will, I know you don't sleep, but this whole house was designed for cranky men to drink and brood in. No, there's a card game that I'm late for. She had no idea if he was joking, but he turned to walk away just the same. The pair were fully just going to leave, punching out at the end of their shift. This was, in fact, just their job. Okay then, she said to their backs. We'll, resume the war in the morning. Oh, Will? He turned. For your assignment tonight, did you do it? If we had to go after Chob, is there a way to... He said, There's a way, if it comes to that. There was something funny in the way he said it, but Zoey didn't have the energy to pursue it. Good. Okay. Go home, yeah. Get some sleep. She watched him go, muttering something to Echo as they walked. She never asked how he'd hurt his hand. Zoey shambled her way toward her room, using the wall to steady herself. Wu followed her, despite him being the one person she'd actually asked to leave. On her way, she brought up Stench Machine's blink feed to see if she could pinpoint his location in the yard, only to find it was offline. This was not immediate cause for alarm, as it went off automatically when he entered the house so strangers couldn't use his feed to spy on their operation. Do you know where... She opened the bedroom door and saw her cat sitting grumpily on her bed. Oh, found him. Zoey patted him on the way through to the bathroom, then stopped cold at the doorway. The mirror, the one she'd smashed with the chair earlier in the day, was fixed, like it had never happened. Get Carlton. Wu said, Carlton, can you come to Zoey's bathroom? A phrase that would trigger an alert on Carlton's phone. Zoey supposed she could have just as easily have done that. The man appeared 90 seconds later. Zoey asked, Who fixed this?
The usual maintenance man, Rousseau. He has been thoroughly vetted.
Yeah, but who ordered it fixed?
I took the liberty. There were sharp pieces on the floor.
Hold on. Zoey calmly walked over, picked up the chair, and swung it into the mirror again. She squeezed her eyes shut as shards bounced off of her face. She tossed the chair on the floor, breathing heavily. I'm not mad, but in the future, ask me. I'll clean this up when I'm ready. Carlton had been in his business for a very, very, very long time, and showed not even the slightest sign of confusion or alarm.
Very good. Will you be needing anything else?
No, thank you. He left, but Wu stayed, and he did, in fact, look alarmed. Zoey kicked some shards with her bare toes, her own fragmented reflection staring back at her. Are you all right? Yes, I'm perfect. I was going to head downstairs, unless you needed me for something. His quarters were on the first floor, where he stayed when there was some kind of elevated threat level. Back home, said Zoey, we always stayed in places that weren't intended to last. It was all stuff you couldn't repair, like paneling, where cracks and scratches and stains just accumulated until somebody would come rip it all out and start over. She walked out of the bathroom, stepping carefully across daggers of broken mirror. She sat on her bed. But, she continued, all of that damage, it has a story, good and bad. You remember the crack in the closet door from wrestling with your boyfriend. You see the little rip in the screen door and remember when you got drunk and fell into it. All those scars, they're yours. They're the history of a time spent in a place. Like kintsugi, said Wu, your Japanese vase, with the golden cracks, making the damage a part of who you are. That vase was, in fact, in the corner behind him. Yeah, right. But this place, since I fixed it up, it's all so clean. It's like in a movie where the main character lives in a huge mansion, but you can tell it's a soundstage. You know what I mean? Never any sign that it's a place where people lived. No scuffs in the floor tiles. No rings where people have set down coffee mugs. No damage. It's like it's not meant for people. Like I'm an unwanted guest here. I hate it. I can bring my 3 teenagers. The place will be a suitable disaster area within half an hour. Zoey started to smile, but it made her face hurt. She had bruises everywhere. Do you want a beer? No, thank you. He clearly wanted to leave. Probably needed to call his family, explain that work was going to keep him overnight. Again. When I first showed up here, right after my father died, when it was all of his stuff still here, I went down to that glass room at the end of the estate, with the hot tub. When I first saw it, there was a woman's bikini top draped over a rail, and I remember thinking, hey, a party happened here. It kind of put me at ease, a little bit. Then later, Carlton told me that bikini top was always there. He was told not to move it. My father left it as a little hint to any girls who showed up that taking their tops off was both customary and expected. Wu said he was passionate about what he believed in. Zoey got a beer for herself from the mini fridge. She sat back on the bed and rubbed her forehead. Why are they going to make me do this? Why do they want to turn me into a monster? Everything was fine. Why couldn't they leave it that way? How many people do you intend to ask that question? I figure I'll keep at it until I get an answer that makes sense to me. Will says it's a core of psychopaths surrounded by a much larger group of bored idiots. Wu gave it some thought. I suppose. I would take it one step further and say that a psychopath is nothing but someone who is pathologically bored, to the point that they would burn the world just to break up the routine. Zoey fell back onto the bed. I'm exhausted. Get some sleep. No, I mean, in general, I wake up exhausted. Every day. You are 23. If you can stick this out and push through, you will find it gets a lot worse. She laughed, a little, then groaned with the pain. He started to leave, but she said, Is it weird that I don't know anything about you? I am not offended that you do not ask about my personal life, if that's what you mean. He was still standing with one foot out of the door, politely answering questions from his weird boss, probably hating it more than the mortal danger he'd just been in, but the thought of being alone was killing Zoey. Wait, it just occurred to me that you said you had 3 teenagers at home. Were you serious? Yes, one is in college, actually. Really? Wait, how old are you? How old would you guess? 30? Somewhere around there. I am 46, as of last month. Wow, I missed your birthday. You never get to see your kids. You're always here. You are putting all 3 through very good schools, all destined to work very long hours to make sure their children have the same. Good night. He started to leave again. Zoey rushed to think of something else to say. Do you like working for me? Am I a good boss? Wu, clearly now wishing he'd missed that railing and fallen to his death, said, You are fine. Zoey covered her eyes with a hand. Oh my God, you hate me, don't you? Not at all. But you and I have, let's say, very different values. That is not a reason to hate a person. In fact, I would say you should beware of any men at my age who too easily relate to women your age. We are from very different worlds. Well, I'm sorry I missed your birthday. Will there be anything else? After a torturous pause, she said, "No, thank you." He closed the door. Zoey curled up in her bed, sticky, dried blood on her hands and feet, pain settling over her like a cloud. The monitor above the bed was on, and she hadn't even noticed. It showed her what was, according to the ranking tag in the corner, by far the most popular feed at the moment. A group of guys huddled around a tiny table inside one of the storage apartments at the Screw. A single piece of pizza sat on a paper plate, and they prodded it with a plastic knife, as if they were afraid to touch it. "And you see these tiny bits of meat on here? That's not sausage," said the scruffy kid from earlier. "We got a sample to our friend for analysis. That's human flesh right there. This backs up the rumors we've heard from the VOP evidence team, that at least one of the pizzas the cow brought to us had part of a human finger in it. We'll try to get DNA and see if we can match it up with any missing person." Zoey said, "Turn that shit off." And the house understood. 20. Zoey woke up in the usual way, with Stench Machine batting at her face with his paw, demanding to be fed. She fought a war against her stiffened limbs to sit upright, and almost jumped out of her skin when she saw she wasn't alone. The figure was sitting in the chair in the corner. A light automatically clicked on, revealing Zoey's mother, curled up in the chair, asleep. "Mom?" She stirred and stretched. "Hey, what's going on?" "Got in last night. They said you were in bed already. I didn't want to wake you. I snuck in. Wanted to make sure you didn't have nightmares. You always mumble when you're dreaming. Remember that, when you were little? When I used to come in and crawl into bed with you?" "How much do you know about what happened last night?" "I was given a carefully edited version of events by your friend Will." "I think we're at war." "Aren't you always?" "No, it's different this time. They, are apparently coming after us, somehow. Tonight. If you stay here today, behind the walls, you should be safe." She was shaking her head. "No, I have work. Then we're all going to the Black Parade. Gotta get to the good spots early." "No, Mom, that's a terrible idea. The bad people can hurt me or not hurt me, but I'm not going to imprison myself. That's doing their job for them. Will you do it as a favor to me, so I won't worry? Will you step away from your life, so I don't worry? Come on, Mom. I mean it, Z. You could do it any time you want. Take what you can get away with, an amount they won't come after you for, and we'll go away together. Go back home if you want. Could go take a trip to Estes like we used to. See the elk." "You know I can't." "I know you think you can't. Honey, you're not happy here. What's here? The money? What's the money doing for you? Other than allow me to get the absolute best medicine, food, housing, and transportation, plus warmth in the winter and AC in the summer, and total freedom to go anywhere, anytime, plus power and influence, and protection from anyone who would do me harm, plus a whole world of men who actually have to take my opinion seriously? Other than that, yeah, you're right. It's just numbers in a bank account." Zoey saw the look on her mother's face and said, "Sorry, but I have to stick this out. I just do." Her mother shrugged. "So do I." "You know, whenever I'm being stubborn, you always say I get it from my father, but I think I get it from you." Her mother came over and kissed her on the forehead, for probably the 10,000th time in her life. "Love you, Z. I just ask one thing. Will you at least turn your phone on and answer if I call?" "Will do, and I'll be with friends." "With that guy, Clarity?" No, he hasn't been returning my calls. As soon as he got payment for the skin cream stock, he suddenly canceled our weekend plans." "I'll buy it. The remaining stock, I mean. I don't want you to get stuck with it." "You don't have to do that." "It's fine. I'll give it away at parties. It'll be fine." "Honey, you don't have to take care of me. I've always done okay. We've always done okay. You don't need to worry about me. I'm a survivor." "I know, Mom." She left, and soon Zoey was wincing her way through a shower, the pulsing water discovering new wounds for her. Then she got dressed in a battle-ready outfit, black jeans and a black denim jacket. She figured to make it harder to hit her in the dark, and a dark gray t-shirt that in big yellow letters said, "How about I slap your shit?" Zoey found everyone had congregated in the enormous kitchen for brunch. She made a beeline for the coffee bar, situated next to an actual bar complete with a mirrored wall full of liquor bottles, and its professional-grade espresso machine. She could hear Carlton working the deep fryers across the room, while Bud and Andre waited at the counter like a pair of dogs who'd come running at the sound of a can opener. Carlton was plating karaage chicken, a Japanese junk food staple, little hunks of dark meat marinated in soy sauce, rice wine, and sake, then coated in potato starch and fried, served with a creamy mayo lemon sauce. Carlton said probably half of her father's menu requests were simply the result of him running into a street food truck somewhere in Asia and commanding Carlton to recreate it. Will was over by a wall of fresh herbs growing in rows of hydroponic pots, on the phone with someone, sipping something clear from a glass. It was only 10 in the morning, and it took a moment for Zoey to realize that the mysterious clear beverage was probably water. The bandage on his hand had been replaced by a large Band-Aid. Echo came over to the bar, carrying a refrigerated thermos that probably contained a ground-up seaweed milkshake or something. Her battle outfit was a tan leather jacket over a sweatshirt and leggings, which made Zoey think she wasn't taking the battle seriously, considering that was the same thing she'd worn when they'd gone to an Oktoberfest thing in Snowbird a few weeks ago. Despite everything that had happened the night before, Echo looked like a collector had kept her in her original box until just now. Zoey said, "My God, were you in an accident on the way home? Did your face hit a truck carrying some kind of horrible toxic waste?" Echo said, "Funny you should say that, because on the way home I waved to you on the sidewalk, but it turned out it wasn't you. It was a dumpster full of butts. There was a hospital there, and that's where they threw away their old butts. I feel like a pile of trash butts. How many bruises do you have?" Echo pulled her shirt away from her neck, showing off a splash of purple. "All over my back, too." Zoey showed a blotchy arm. "We look like we've been playing rugby. What happened to Will's hand?" "He won't say. Probably bit himself in the frenzy of a hot dog eating contest." On cue, Will approached and said, "One of you needs to put a cancellation notice together. Keep the reasoning vague." "Cancellation? For what? The Halloween party tomorrow?" "Oh, we're not canceling the party," said Zoey. "Screw that. We have like 500 kids coming." "Zoey, we can't have the setup crew coming in and out today while we're preparing for the siege or whatever is happening tonight. We have a guy out there calibrating sensors and adding extra shots to the anti-personnel array. Not only would the work crews be in the way, but if these people wanted to get someone inside the barriers, by far, the easiest way to do that would be to pay off one of the workers. Then you could forget about exotic tech or a VOP entry team. All it would take is one contractor putting a nail gun to your temple." "Well, then we'd better get busy then." "Doing?" "Setting up the haunted maze in the courtyard. There's 7 people in this room right now. The walls are all prefabricated. They just snap together. Echo has the schematics on her phone, right?" Echo looked to Will, hoping for a rescue. Zoey said, "Do I own this business or not? We're not letting these people run my life, and we're not letting them ruin Halloween for those kids." Will said, "How is it going to be safe to have children on the grounds when you're under this kind of threat?" "Then that means we have today to resolve the threat, don't we? If the estate isn't still standing after that, then I guess somebody can let the kids tour the charred wreckage. Look, kids, it's real skeletons." "Bud, is there any more information about what's coming?" She had caught Bud in the middle of chewing some chicken. Blank caught a couple of ringleaders talking about a device made to break the gates. Maybe a battering ram, I guess. They even named it. Do I want to know what they named it? Molech. Ugh, these people. Will, what do we have to counter a battering ram? If they break down the decorative gates, and also the titanium pillars that pop up to replace it, if people come charging through, they will be cut down. But what if they're wearing armor, or are in armored VOP vehicles? Then they will be cut down. But if Titus Chob is running the operation, he knows how sophisticated the system is, right? Maybe he knows a weakness to defeat the system's artificial intelligence or whatever. Then again, he now knows we know he's involved, so knows that we know he'll be looking for a weakness. Stop. The solution is the same no matter how far you go down that rabbit hole. We need more humans. The AI is nice, but to counter people, you need people. That'll probably always be true. The problem, Bud said, is that every sizable security outfit in the city is either owned by Chob or could potentially get a buyout soon, so they have reason to sit it out. Our own security is stretched thin guarding the other properties. We could call them in, but we'd be leaving those workers vulnerable, said Zoey. We're not doing that. Yep, we knew you'd say that, but that did limit our options, you understand. All right, so what do we do? Andre said, get someone who hates Chob as much as we do. And who is that? Andre, Bud, and Will looked at Zoey in dead silence, like they were waiting for something. What are you doing? Finally, Andre turned around and looked back at the door. Sorry, Mega Boss Alonzo was supposed to walk through the door at that moment. Is he not out there? Echo went into the hall. No. Did anyone see him leave?
Anyway, said Andre, we made a deal with Alonzo. Would have been a really cool reveal. We had it all worked out, but...
Wait, the heart-eating guy? That's who we're entrusting our safety to? Will said, trust isn't necessary when everyone has the same goals. That's how society functions in general. As for the heart-eating thing, that works in our favor. If, as I suspect, our enemies are amateurs, that fear factor may turn out to be an advantage. Zoey saw a quarter of Alonzo's face peeking around the door frame from the hall. Andre noticed and said,
Come on in. We told her. You missed your cue.
Alonzo stepped in alongside a wiry woman with a chiseled jaw. Zoey recalled her from the counter at Alonzo's store. Both wore tailored business suits. Alonzo's was pumpkin orange, with a black shirt and no tie. Zoey was intensely curious about whether or not he'd chosen that suit for the holiday. Sorry, Dee needed a bathroom, and I incorrectly thought I knew where one was. It took us a while to find our way back. Oh, Zoey, there you are. This is Dee Dee. She's my bodyguard. Dee Dee, this is Zoey. You know how we did that thing with the pig heart yesterday? Well, Zoey eats people for real. Dee Dee seemed unimpressed. It's a free country. This ain't Idaho. Zoey said, Is it just the two of you, or are you bringing foot soldiers? I can get you, I'd say, 14 capable people on the grounds within the hour. All right, and will they be insulted if I ask them to help put up some Halloween decorations? Not if you provide lunch. He rubbed his hands together. So, can I see it?